show. Hello. Okay, as you know, we are an open mic here. It's not just music. We've often had our resident poet who comes down to do some stuff. But tonight, I think it's the first time we've ever had any comedy. So, would you please, really, maybe just come and sit at the table here and let's all get cosy. And a big hand, please, for Helen.
Hello, my name's Helen, and I am the only insecure woman in the whole world. And I thought, by the time I got to my 50s, I'd be happily married, I'd have a proper job, and basically, I'd be an adult. And when I was a little girl, I dreamed of my fairy tale wedding, the dress, the bridesmaids, the church, the flowers, and I pretty much had all of that except for one important thing that I forgot, and that was the man. So sadly, it didn't all end happily ever after. And then a few years ago, he died very suddenly, quite young, and it was actually of natural causes. And so that left me thinking, where does that leave me? Because we were divorced, so I'm not technically a widow, although he was the father of my children. And then I thought, well, actually, what that makes me is a bloody good catch, because I'm divorced, and there's no ex around to make my life difficult, and because I'm not really a widow, I wasn't in love with him either. So guys, here I am. And then I was thinking, well, because he was young, he hadn't left a will, and I thought, well, if I hadn't divorced him, because his second wife pretty much got everything. She got the widow's pension, she got the death benefit, she got the life insurance, the house, and I thought, well, if I hadn't divorced him, I'd have got all that. Except, no, my luck, if I hadn't, he wouldn't have bloody died, would he? And I'd still be stuck with him. So last year, I was thinking, as my kids are now grown up, what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Thinking about my career, such as it is, and this little voice inside my head said, well, you know what you'd really like, Helen? You'd really love a relationship. I'm thinking, no, I'm a strong, independent woman. I brought up 3 kids on my own. I'm happy being single. I don't need a man. And this little voice says, yeah, it'd be quite nice to have a guy around to sort of hang out with and have fun with. So I thought, well, you know what, actually, maybe I'll listen to my intuition for once and see what happens. And then a few days later, I got a message on Twitter from a guy that I knew back in the 1990s, because he was in the same business as my ex-husband. And I was about to reply, and then I suddenly thought, actually, potentially, this guy actually ticks all my boxes. And so I'm thinking, oh my God, a bit anxious, what am I going to say to him? First thought that pops into my head, oh, I wonder if he knows my ex-husband's died. I thought, well, no. Cardinal rule about sort of first dates, messages or whatever, you don't talk about exes. And then, added to that, I thought, especially dead ones. So we exchanged emails, and then he didn't reply. Me checking my phone 2 days later, no, still no reply. And they're thinking, oh well, all insecurities kicking in, I fucked up, haven't I? Put him off already after one email. I'm really good at this. Well, we then arranged to meet up. So I'm driving along the A27, bearing in mind I hadn't seen him since 1999 and wondering if I was going to recognise him, because back then we were both in our 30s. So I said, well, how am I going to know it's you? Are you going to be wearing a red carnation? Because I always fancied doing that blind date thing, because all the fun's been taken out of it now with internet dating, because you can see people's photos. Well, it went fine, and he actually confessed that he was slightly nervous too. And I thought, well, what are the odds of that then? The only 2 insecure people in the world, and we happened to meet. And then a few days later, I went off travelling in India for 3 weeks. So we kept in touch via email and WhatsApp and Skype and what have you. And I've been there a couple of weeks, and I hadn't heard anything from him for a few days. So I was lying in bed one evening in my beach hut in Goa. And why is that relevant, you ask? Well, it isn't really, I just wanted to rub it in, And, hey! And I'm on my phone, typing out this heartfelt email to him. And you just love smartphones because suddenly you hear that fateful sound, whoosh, and it's gone. I think, oh shit, nothing I can do about it now. Anyway, next morning I woke up, he hadn't replied, and plugged my phone into charge, looked down, and somehow I'm managing to call him on Skype. And it's 2 a.m. here, and I'm thinking, well, that's it, isn't it? He's going to think I'm a right fucking nutter. And I went out for the day, came back. He replied, and actually, it turned out he hadn't been in contact for a few days because he'd been ill. And I thought, well, that explains it then, doesn't it? You know, he's a man, he can't multitask, he can't be ill and message me at the same time. So when I came back to England, we arranged to meet up again. We went out for dinner, went for a walk, and then ended up snogging like a couple of teenagers. And then he said to me, he said, you know what, Helen? He said, I've never actually kissed a maths teacher before. So I said, I'm really sorry, you know, I can't say the same about aircraft engineers. And we went out again, and we were sharing, like, you know, some pretty personal stuff. And I'm thinking, I'm actually starting to quite like this guy. I mean, obviously I liked him before, but, you know, perhaps starting to fall for him a bit. And then, ladies, do you know what he did? Or what he didn't do, the usual man thing. Once you start to get a bit close, didn't hear anything from him. Nothing, went quiet. So I'm talking to my friends in the States. My best friend is out there at the moment. She said, why don't you come and visit me? I thought, isn't that perfect? You know, he's going to be distant. I can beat him that. I'm going to go 3,000 miles away. And the thing is about all this modern dating stuff, they have all these rules now. And one of the things is, after a while, if you've been seeing somebody, you're supposed to have an exclusivity talk. Because it always seems to be assumed these days that people will date around a bit before they decide on settling one person. I think, well, back in my day, when I was young, it used to be you go out with somebody, and if you wanted to see them again, it was sort of understood that you'd be exclusive unless you were a bit of an arsehole. And then it's like this dating thing. It's so painful sometimes. You think, why do you put yourself through it? But it's like having kids, isn't it? You have one, and a few years later, you forget all the pain somehow, and then you go and have another one. Anyway, so then we get to New Year's Eve, and I'll go to my friend's house, and we'll have a few drinks, perhaps smoke a few things I shouldn't have done. And I think perhaps you can guess what's coming next. Go to bed that night, out comes the phone, start emailing him, oh, I miss you, I really want to talk to you, you know, all that really attractive stuff. So he didn't reply. Surprisingly enough, so I think, well, I've had enough of this. So email him again and say, I think we want different things, you know, perhaps we should stop seeing each other. So he emailed back and said he wanted to be friends. And do you remember the book that came out in the 1990s called Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus? Because another thing is, we're both Cancerians. So if you know anything about star signs, the Cancer goes into the crab, goes into its shell to protect itself. So of course he's going into his shell, I'm going into mine. So that actually makes you wonder how crabs actually ever manage to mate. And then thinking about the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and apparently every so often the man goes off into his man cave, but this one, he didn't just go into his cave, he went potholing. So, thank you. I'm a woman, not a fish. You've been a great audience. Good night.